On a sunny afternoon, Claire, a successful executive at a consulting firm specializing in artesian wells, was deeply engrossed in meetings. The day had begun with an odd sense of foreboding that she couldn't shake off, but she chose to ignore it, focusing instead on her work. As she reviewed documents and strategized with her team, her phone began to vibrate incessantly. Frustrated by the interruption, she ignored it at first, determined to maintain her professional demeanor. However, the persistent buzzing forced her to pause. "Apologies, gentlemen, I need 5 minutes." "This must be important," Claire said as she excused herself and stepped out of the meeting room. Glancing at the caller ID, she noticed the call was from her hometown, where her daughter, Mavis, was studying. Concern began to creep in as she answered. "Good morning, Mrs. Clare. This is St. Patrick's Hospital. We regret to inform you that," the voice on the other end hesitated before continuing, "your daughter, Mavis, she has passed away." The words hit Claire like a thunderclap. For a moment, the world around her seemed to blur. "What? No. That can't be true. Are you joking?" she stammered in disbelief. "We understand your pain, ma'am," the caller said solemnly. "Mavis was in a severe accident and didn't survive." Still in shock, Claire dropped her phone and sprinted to her husband Richard's office. He, too, had already received the news. Sitting with his face buried in his hands, his tear-streaked eyes met hers. "Claire, she's gone," he whispered, his voice trembling. Claire collapsed into a chair, struggling to process the unthinkable. "How? She was fine when I spoke to her yesterday," she sobbed. Richard embraced her, their shared grief filling the room. "We need to go," he said gently. "We need answers. I've already arranged for us to leave." They traveled back to their hometown in stunned silence, their hearts heavy with loss. At the funeral home, Claire approached Mavis's coffin, her hands trembling as she caressed her daughter's cold face. Overcome with grief, she fell to her knees, pleading, "Bury me with her. I can't live without her." As tears streamed down her face, Claire noticed something odd. A faint twitch in Mavis's hand caught her eye. At first, she thought it was a cruel trick of her imagination, but then she saw it again. Her breath caught in her throat as she screamed, "She's alive! Someone help!" The room erupted in chaos as attendees rushed to her side, trying to comprehend what was happening. What followed was beyond anyone's imagination, a startling revelation that changed everything they thought they knew about that tragic day. "Driver, prepare the car," Richard said, his voice trembling as he tried to stay composed. Claire and her husband left the office behind, abandoning what suddenly felt like a trivial day at work. They got into the car and began the long drive toward the city where Mavis had been living. The journey was mostly silent, broken only by quiet sobs as each was lost in their own thoughts and memories of their beloved daughter. "She had so many dreams, so many plans," Claire whispered, her voice heavy with sorrow. "And now, oh, my God." Richard reached over to hold her hand, tears silently streaming down his face. The weight of their loss began to settle in, filling the car with a suffocating sense of emptiness. The hours passed slowly, each moment stretching into an eternity. By the time they reached their destination, the sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the town now darkened by tragedy. At the doorstep of Mavis's home, they were met by her fiancé, Luke, who was visibly shaken. The three embraced, their grief uniting them in a painful silence. Between broken sobs, Luke explained what had happened. Mavis had been driving home from the hospital where she was an intern when a man attempted to rob her. Panicked, she tried to escape, but in her rush, she lost control of the car. It flipped and tumbled down a ravine. "She didn't survive the crash," Luke said, his voice cracking. "The doctors did everything they could, but," he choked on his words. "She just wanted to come home." Claire and Richard listened in stunned silence, their faces etched with anguish. Their vibrant, ambitious daughter, who had been the center of their world, was gone. "My baby, my girl," Claire murmured, her voice barely audible between sobs. She was so full of life, so determined, Richard added, his voice heavy with grief. And now, it's all over. Luke nodded, tears streaming down his face. We were going to build a future together, get married once we were more stable. She was so excited. Claire reached out, trying to comfort him even as her own heart shattered. I spoke to her yesterday. She couldn't stop talking about your plans, your wedding, she said, her voice trembling. I don't know how I'm supposed to go on without her, Luke whispered, his words barely audible through his tears. That night, Claire and Richard stayed in the home Mavis had once filled with laughter and dreams. The silence was deafening, broken only by their soft cries as they clung to each other for support. The thought of never hearing her laugh again, of never sharing another moment with her, was almost too much to bear. The next morning was bleak and grey, a fitting backdrop for the sorrowful occasion. At the funeral, the air was thick with grief. The room was adorned with flowers and photos of Mavis, but nothing could ease the pain of her untimely death. Her parents stood by her coffin, inconsolable, while Luke, kneeling nearby, murmured, "This wasn't supposed to happen. It was supposed to be our future." As the time came to close the casket, Claire broke down, her maternal instincts refusing to let go. She leaned over her daughter's lifeless body, gently caressing her face. "No, I can't leave her here alone," she sobbed. "I want to be buried with her." Richard, also overwhelmed with grief, tried to console her. "She'll always be with us, Claire," he said, though his words felt hollow in the face of their loss. But just as the attendants moved to close the coffin, Claire froze, her hand brushing against Mavis's stomach. She felt something, faint but unmistakable. A slight movement. "Wait!" Claire cried, her voice shaking as she placed her hand back on the spot. Her breath caught in her throat as she leaned closer. She's pregnant," Claire whispered, the realization crashing over her. Richard stared at her in shock. "What are you talking about?" "I felt it," Claire insisted, now pressing her ear against her daughter's abdomen. "There's a baby." She was pregnant. Her scream pierced the room, leaving everyone in stunned silence as the unimaginable truth began to unfold. The funeral hall fell silent, enveloped in shock. Even Luke, the grieving fiancé, stared in disbelief as the revelation struck him. He had no idea she was pregnant. "How could this be possible?" he whispered, his voice barely audible, consumed by the whirlwind of emotions. Claire, feeling a faint movement in her daughter's belly again, pleaded urgently for Mavis to be taken to the hospital. Thanks to the family's wealth, they were able to quickly arrange transport to a private medical facility nearby. At the hospital, a team of doctors and nurses sprang into action, performing an ultrasound on Mavis's body. What they discovered left everyone astounded. There was indeed a baby inside her womb. "This can't be real," murmured one of the doctors, staring at the monitor in disbelief. Claire and Richard watched, frozen between hope and despair, as the medical team prepared for an unprecedented and delicate procedure, delivering the baby from a deceased mother. In the operating room, tension hung thick in the air. The team worked with precision, every movement calculated and careful. Outside, Luke and Mavis's parents waited anxiously, each second stretching unbearably. "We'll do everything we can," the lead surgeon reassured them, his face etched with determination. After what felt like an eternity, the room was filled with a fragile cry as a tiny baby girl, small enough to fit in the palm of a hand, was carefully delivered. She was immediately placed in an incubator, with the medical team working tirelessly to stabilize her. "She's so premature," one doctor explained solemnly. "Her organs are still developing. It's a miracle she survived at all." Claire, Richard, and Luke were overwhelmed with a flood of emotions, grief for Mavis, mixed with awe and gratitude for the tiny life that had emerged from the tragedy. Tears streamed down Claire's face as she whispered, "She kicked to let us know she was still here, to save her." Luke stood speechless, grappling with the realization that his daughter might have been buried with Mavis, her existence forever unknown. "I'll take care of her," he vowed through tears. "She's all I have left of Mavis." Thanks to the family's resources, a specialized hospital unit was equipped with cutting-edge technology to give the baby the best chance at survival. The following months were a roller coaster of challenges. The family rarely left the hospital, taking turns keeping vigil by the incubator. Every small movement, every breath, was a testament to the infant's fight for life. "Please, God, give her strength," Claire whispered countless times, her hands pressed against the glass. "She's all we have left of our Mavis." Luke found solace in his daughter, spending hours by her side, telling her stories about the mother she would never meet. "Your mom was amazing," he would say softly. "And you're our little miracle." The journey was fraught with critical moments when it seemed the baby might not make it. "She's so small, so fragile," a doctor cautioned. "At just 5 months, her chances are slim, but she's fighting." And fight she did. Against all odds, the tiny girl grew stronger with each passing day, defying every expectation. Finally, after months of tireless care and endless prayers, the day arrived when the baby was strong enough to leave the hospital. The staff, who had once doubted her survival, now applauded her remarkable recovery. "This truly is a miracle," one nurse remarked as the family prepared to take her home. Carrying the baby in his arms, Luke looked at her with a mix of love and gratitude. "Let's go home, my little princess," he said tenderly. Claire, gazing at her granddaughter, felt an unbreakable connection to Mavis through the child. "You'll know everything about your mom," she promised. The journey from heartbreak to hope was complete, as the family left the hospital with a profound sense of gratitude for the precious life that had emerged from such profound loss. On a sweltering day in Los Angeles, Damon wandered through the crowded, dusty streets, his face etched with both hope and desperation. He moved from shop to shop, tirelessly asking for work, any job, no matter how small. The oppressive heat made his clothes stick to his sweat-soaked body, and the relentless sun scorched his skin, leaving it red and raw. His stomach churned with hunger, a constant reminder of his dire circumstances. With the last of his coins, Damon purchased a burger and a soda, knowing it might be his only meal for the day. He chewed slowly, savoring each bite, as his thoughts churned, a blend of hope and fear. "Will I ever find a chance?" he whispered to himself, casting a pleading glance at the unyielding blue sky. The day stretched on in the same discouraging manner. Every attempt to find work ended with yet another rejection, each "no" hammering into Damon a deeper sense of despair. He understood why the doors were closing before him. He was an ex-convict, marked by a past that society refused to forgive. To the world, he was a pariah, undeserving of trust or a second chance. Every rejection felt like a judgment, a damning verdict on his worth as a human being. The stares he received were heavy with suspicion and disdain, reminding him of the stigma he could never escape. Damon wasn't just searching for a job, he was fighting to reclaim his humanity in a world that seemed to have already sentenced him to permanent exile. As the hours dragged on, his hope waned. Exhaustion, hunger, and the weight of rejection gnawed at his spirit. Questions about his future swirled relentlessly in his mind. Did he even have a place in this world? Could he ever break free from the invisible chains of his past? He watched families pass by, parents laughing with their children, sharing tender moments of joy. Each sound of laughter felt like a stab to his heart, a cruel reminder of the life he longed for but feared he would never have. Damon ached not just for acceptance but for the simple things, belonging, love, and the chance to start fresh. To society, however, he was still a prisoner, confined by the shadows of his past mistakes. The stigma clung to him like a second skin, suffocating his dreams of redemption. Every time a door shut in his face, it was as though the world was reminding him that it had not forgotten, or forgiven, his history. Despite his desperation, Damon carried the weight of a tragic backstory. Born into a broken family and raised in poverty, he had learned early on that life was a constant struggle. As a young man, he had fought against a tide of hardships, doing whatever was necessary to survive. But life had dealt him harsh cards, and he had made choices that led him down a dark path. Now, having served his time, Damon yearned for nothing more than a second chance, a sliver of hope to prove that he was more than the mistakes of his past. But as he stood on the crowded streets of Los Angeles, drenched in sweat and weighed down by hunger, he couldn't shake the feeling that the world would never give him that chance. Still, deep in his heart, a flicker of hope refused to die, even as the odds seemed insurmountable. At just 17, Damon found work as a delivery driver, a glimmer of hope for a better life. However, one fateful delivery turned his world upside down. Unbeknownst to him, he was transporting illicit goods as part of a police sting targeting a long-sought criminal gang. Despite Damon's pleas of innocence, explaining he had no knowledge of the package's contents, the authorities didn't believe him. The situation spiraled out of control when the operation escalated into chaos, gunfire, a frantic chase, and lives lost. Damon, a young man of integrity, was swept up in the turmoil and accused of being part of the gang. The court sentenced him to a harsh punishment, 10 years in prison. Now 27 and newly released, Damon faced an unforgiving world. His family had disowned him, and society branded him with the stigma of his criminal record. He found doors closing at every turn, with employers unwilling to give him a chance. Consumed by despair, Damon wrestled with the grim reality of possibly ending up homeless and unable to rebuild his life. Sitting on a bench after another fruitless day of job hunting in the scorching Los Angeles heat, Damon's mind raced with anguish. "Why me?" he whispered through tears, shielding his face with his hands as if to hide his pain from a world that had turned its back on him. The sky blazed with hues of orange and red as the sun dipped below the horizon, but for Damon, the colors of hope seemed forever gray. Amidst the heaviness, a small ember of determination sparked within him. He wiped his tears and resolved, "I won't let this break me." Despite the weight of his past, Damon decided to keep trying. He knocked on more doors, even as rejection loomed large. On what seemed like another day of defeat, Damon's determination collided with fate. Outside a bustling diner, the sound of distant screams and sirens filled the air. Intrigued and compelled by the commotion, Damon followed the crowd toward the source. A blazing fire had engulfed a nearby building. As he wove through the panicked onlookers, Damon realized with horror that the burning structure was a daycare. Flames consumed the building as teachers struggled to comfort terrified children, some clinging desperately to their protectors. The scene was chaos, firefighters battled the inferno, explosions echoed, and smoke darkened the sky. Among the crowd, a man emerged from a black car, his face a portrait of terror. Shoving past onlookers, he screamed for his daughter, his voice raw with panic. A firefighter, covered in soot and exhaustion, assured him that all the children had been evacuated. "No. My daughter is still inside," the man cried, his desperation piercing the air. Damon's gaze locked on the burning building and, without a second thought, he pushed through the barricades. A resolve unlike any he'd felt before gripped him. While others watched in fear, Damon dashed toward the flames, determined to bring light to a moment engulfed in darkness. At the age of 17, Damon found himself caught in a tragedy that would change his life forever. A man, once full of promise, had taken on a delivery job, a glimmer of hope for a better future. But during one fateful delivery, unknowingly carrying an illicit package, Damon became entangled in a sting operation targeting a dangerous gang. What began as an innocent task spiraled into chaos, gunfire, a high-speed chase, and devastating losses. Despite his claims of innocence, Damon was arrested and convicted as an accomplice, sentenced to 10 years in prison. Now, at 27, Damon had been out of prison for only a week. Society had turned its back on him, his family disowned him, and employers shut their doors at the mere mention of his record. His days were consumed by rejection and despair, and he wandered aimlessly through Los Angeles under the relentless sun. One evening, he collapsed onto a park bench, overwhelmed by the weight of his misfortune. "Why me?" he murmured, tears streaking his face as the sky burned with the colors of sunset. For Damon, the world had lost its light. But even amidst the darkness, a spark of determination ignited within him. "I won't give up," he whispered, drying his tears. Summoning courage, Damon resolved to rebuild his life, one step at a time. That same day, while walking into what seemed like yet another failed job search at a diner, fate took an unexpected turn. Commotion erupted in the streets, a fire was raging in a nearby building. Curious and compelled, Damon rushed to the scene, where chaos and desperation reigned. The structure engulfed in flames was a children's daycare. Smoke billowed into the sky as firefighters fought valiantly to contain the inferno. Among the crowd, a distraught man screamed for his daughter, Ayla, insisting she was still trapped inside. The firefighters, constrained by the building's imminent collapse, declared it too dangerous to re-enter. "Please, someone save her. My daughter's in there," the man wailed. Damon's heart clenched. He saw the anguish in the father's eyes and felt an undeniable pull. Despite the shouts of protest from those around him, Damon sprinted into the blazing structure, disappearing into the wall of smoke and fire. Inside, the scene was nothing short of hellish. Flames consumed everything, toys melted under the heat, and the air was thick with suffocating smoke. Damon pressed forward, driven by a single thought: save the girl. Then, through the haze, he spotted a small figure lying motionless, a little girl. Without hesitation, he scooped her into his arms. "I've got you," he whispered, shielding her from the flames. Navigating the collapsing building was a race against time. Debris fell around him, and the searing heat licked at his skin. When his path was blocked by flames, Damon realized his only option was to jump. He spotted a window overlooking a patch of shrubs. "Hold on," he murmured to the unconscious child, bracing her tightly against his chest as he leaped through the glass. The crowd outside gasped as Damon emerged from the smoke, cradling Ayla. His clothes were charred, his skin blistered, but his resolve was unbroken. He placed the child into the arms of the firefighters, who immediately began resuscitation efforts. For agonizing moments, silence hung over the scene, broken only by the crackling flames and urgent cries of the rescuers. Then, against all odds, Ayla opened her eyes, drawing a collective sigh of relief from the crowd. Her father fell to his knees, clutching her and sobbing uncontrollably. Turning to Damon, he asked with tears streaming down his face, "Why would you risk your life like that?" Damon, exhausted but resolute, replied, "Because everyone deserves a second chance." Damon risked his life in a blaze of selfless courage. When asked why he would endanger himself to save a stranger's daughter, he met the father's gaze with a mixture of pain and resilience. "I've spent the last decade behind bars for something I didn't do," he began, his voice heavy with the weight of injustice. "My life feels like it's reached a dead end. No one's willing to give me a second chance. But your daughter, her life is just starting. She has a future ahead of her, and I had nothing left to lose." Overwhelmed with gratitude, the father, Jonathan Beck, a powerful insurance magnate, embraced Damon tightly. "You've given yourself another chance," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. Those words planted a seed of hope in Damon's broken heart, a glimmer of redemption in a life that had felt devoid of purpose. Jonathan, deeply moved by Damon's heroism, made an extraordinary decision. He offered Damon not just a job but a lifeline, a chance to rebuild his life within his company. Jonathan didn't stop there, he invested in Damon's future, enrolling him in courses on finance and corporate training, equipping him with the tools to thrive in his new role. Damon seized the opportunity with unwavering determination, immersing himself in the corporate world. His fresh perspective, coupled with his relentless dedication, brought innovation and meaningful progress to the company. As time passed, Jonathan became more than an employer, he became a mentor and a steadfast friend. Their bond deepened, with Damon becoming a cherished part of Jonathan's family. He shared in their lives, forming a special connection with the young girl he had saved, now calling her Ayla with affection. Surrounded by people who saw beyond his past and believed in his potential, Damon transformed. The man once condemned to a life of despair now had a family and a purpose. As he stood one evening, reflecting on how far he had come, Damon felt a surge of gratitude. His journey had not been easy, but it had led him to this moment of belonging. Finally, with a genuine smile and a heart full of hope, Damon realized he had found his place in the world, a testament to the power of second chances and the resilience of the human spirit. Imagine the profound impact of an innovation that could redefine medicine, a neural implant designed to restore motor functions and treat neurological disorders. Harper and Declan Grayson, a brilliant couple, a neurologist and a software engineer, had worked tirelessly to make this dream a reality. Harper, with her excitement palpable, often spoke passionately about their project. "This chip could change everything," she once exclaimed. "Imagine restoring mobility for spinal injury patients or addressing mental health issues by targeting the brain's neural networks." Declan shared her enthusiasm. "And with machine learning algorithms," he added, "it would adapt to the patient's needs, predicting treatments before symptoms even appear." The two envisioned their invention connecting to the hippocampus for memory enhancement or the nucleus accumbens to combat addiction, a seamless blend of neuroscience and advanced programming. But fate intervened cruelly. On their way back from a pivotal meeting to gain clinical trial approvals, a deer darted into the road. Declan swerved to avoid it, and in an instant, their world shattered. Harper didn't survive the crash, and Declan was left paralyzed from the neck down, a once vibrant life now confined to a wheelchair. The transition was devastating. Declan, once fiercely independent, now relied on a caregiver for even the simplest tasks. Eating, drinking, and personal hygiene became sources of humiliation. His body was no longer his own, a prison that intensified his grief over losing Harper. "Why didn't I go with you?" he often whispered to the empty room, haunted by her absence. His mind, once a hub of innovation, became a labyrinth of sorrow. Friends urged him to find purpose in their shared project, a legacy for Harper. "This could be her greatest gift," one friend said. "You owe it to her memory to see it through." Despite the crushing weight of his loss, the idea of honoring Harper rekindled a faint spark in Declan. Slowly, he resumed work on the neural implant, pursuing approvals for human trials. Yet, the road was fraught with skepticism. During video meetings with potential investors and medical professionals, Declan faced harsh criticism. Dr. Richard Thompson scoffed, "Your project is remarkable, but how can we entrust something so critical to someone who can't manage his own life?" Another remarked coldly, "Business is business. We need leaders, not liabilities." Each comment cut deep, stoking a fire of frustration and helplessness within him. After each meeting, Declan would sit in silence, his anger simmering. "They don't understand," he muttered. "They have no idea what it's like to lose everything and still fight." At night, when his caregiver left, the darkness became his confidant. Alone, he wept for Harper, for the dream they had nurtured, and for the man he used to be. His tears carried the weight of a year of relentless suffering, of nights spent grappling with an unyielding sense of futility. Yet, amidst the despair, a small, stubborn part of him refused to give up. For Harper's memory and for the countless lives their project could touch, Declan resolved to continue. This, he realized, was his path forward, a mission to transform his pain into a legacy of hope. What would you do if you found yourself in the shoes of this man? Could you find a way out? Let me know in the comments, and I'll be sure to show your response some love. Now, back to our story. One restless night, suffocating under the weight of despair, Declan sat in his wheelchair, gazing into the void. In his mind, he imagined speaking to his late wife, Harper. Why can't they see the potential in this? He questioned, his voice tinged with anger and heartbreak. Why are they so blinded by prejudice and ignorance? This technology could change lives, mine and so many others. Emotions surged through him like a storm, rage, hopelessness, and a profound weariness that went far beyond the physical. But that night, amidst his anguish, something shifted. Declan realized he wouldn't, let things remain this way. The next morning, he appeared resolute. When Sheila, his caregiver, brought him breakfast, he made an unusual request: gather his closest friends and Harper's former colleagues for an emergency meeting. Surprised by the determination in his voice, Sheila complied without hesitation. By afternoon, his living room was filled with familiar faces, all brimming with curiosity and concern. Declan, addressing the group with a seriousness they hadn't seen in months, declared. I've found the perfect candidate for the neural chip trials. A volunteer who can undergo the procedure immediately. A wave of murmurs rippled through the room. Who? Someone asked, breaking the tension. Me, he replied with unwavering confidence. The announcement left the group in stunned silence. Are you out of your mind? This is incredibly dangerous. Protested one of the neurologists present. Another longtime friend added, Declan, you're brilliant, but this isn't ethical. You're emotionally and physically vulnerable right now. He raised a hand to quiet the objections. When the room settled, he continued, his voice firm and determined. I understand your concerns. But every one of you knows the rigorous scientific and ethical standards Harper and I followed when developing this device. I'm fully aware of the risks, but also of the rewards. This technology could transform lives, and I refuse to let it go to waste. His words hung heavy in the air, carrying the weight of both conviction and desperation. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Declan felt a spark of control over his destiny. Despite their doubts, his friends and colleagues recognized the depth of his resolve. They knew they couldn't dissuade him, so they chose to support him. Preparations began for the procedure, to be conducted in Declan's own lab by a trusted medical team, many of whom had worked closely with Harper. On the day of the surgery, the tension was palpable. Declan, dressed in a surgical gown, lay on a gurney as he was wheeled into the operating room. Though filled with hope, he couldn't suppress the nervous thudding of his heart. As the anesthesia took hold, the faces of the medical team blurred, their movements merging into a surreal dance. And then, amidst the haze, he saw her, Harper. She was smiling, her voice a soothing melody in his mind. It's going to be okay, my love, she assured him. The vision was so vivid, so real, that Declan felt a moment of peace before the darkness enveloped him. When he woke days later, familiar faces surrounded him, their expressions a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. Declan, can you hear us? Someone asked. His eyes fluttered open, and his gaze fell on his hand. Try moving it, another voice encouraged. With a racing heart, Declan focused all his energy. Slowly, his fingers twitched. Then, miraculously, his hand lifted. The room erupted into cheers and tears of joy. I can feel it, he whispered, his voice trembling with both disbelief and triumph. I can feel my hand. Overwhelmed, Sheila and others wept openly. Encouraged by the initial success, Declan, with assistance, stood from his bed. Though his legs were unsteady, he took one shaky step, then another. The room fell silent, awestruck, as the once paralyzed man continued forward. Tears streamed down his face as he whispered to the memory of Harper, we did it, my love. We did it. In that moment, Declan Grayson reclaimed not just his mobility, but his purpose. The neural chip wasn't merely a scientific breakthrough, it was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring power of love. Under the subtle glow of the stage lights, Declan Grayson approached the podium with steady determination. The audience sat in silence, their eyes fixed on the man who had seemingly risen from the depths of despair. Adjusting his notes, he cleared his throat and addressed the crowd, his voice calm yet charged with emotion. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to stand before you today to introduce a groundbreaking innovation, the Harper neural implant, named in memory of my late wife, he began. His voice wavered slightly as he spoke her name, a tribute to the woman who had been the cornerstone of his journey. The path leading to that moment had been anything but smooth. After the miracle of regaining his mobility, thanks to the neural implant, Declan had sought out those who had once doubted him, investors and ethicists alike. Armed with undeniable evidence, including medical reports, personal demonstrations, and videos of him walking, running, and even dancing, he left them stunned. The implant's integrated artificial intelligence, Harper Neural AI, was a marvel of engineering. It enabled seamless communication between the brain and muscles, adapting in real time to neural and physiological changes. The technology functions through an advanced array of algorithms, Declan explained to the rapt audience. These algorithms synchronize with the brain's neural signals, continuously adapting and optimizing motor responses for natural movement. This ensures unparalleled functionality and precision. The implant had passed rigorous testing and swiftly gained regulatory approval, making it available for widespread use. But for Declan, this achievement was deeply personal. He prioritized offering the first implants to individuals who had suffered paralysis. Watching their faces light up with hope as they moved for the first time in years filled him with an indescribable sense of fulfillment. No amount of financial success compares to the joy of restoring someone's life and dignity, Declan said, his voice breaking slightly. This project was never about fame or profit, it was about giving people hope and a second chance. As he concluded his speech, the audience erupted into applause, a standing ovation that resonated with the triumph of human spirit and innovation. In the depths of his heart, Declan felt a quiet sense of peace. Somewhere, he believed, Harper was smiling, proud of the legacy they had built together. In that moment, Declan saw a future that stretched endlessly before him, one of possibilities not just for himself, but for countless others whose lives could be transformed. The harmony between human resilience and technological advancement had forged a path forward, and Declan was eager to see what lay ahead. If this story inspired you, don't forget to check out the next video on your screen. Hit subscribe, leave a like, and turn on notifications to stay updated on more captivating tales. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.